Underlying the theme of transfiguration is a sub-theme of change. Perhaps they're one and the same. We've all woken up to change in our lives, in our neighborhoods, and in our world. Sometimes it arrives as a welcome guest, and other times as an unwelcome intruder. Whether desired or unwanted, celebrated or mourned, change often brings with it both challenges and questions. On this Transfiguration Sunday, we encounter a story of change. Peter, James, and John witnessed Jesus transformed before their eyes. His face altered, his clothing gleaming like lightning. In their confusion and awe, they experienced a divine encounter that changed how they understood their teacher. This ancient story speaks directly to our present moment and offers us three things to think about when facing change in our lives and in our world. Listening for the voice of Jesus, how to pick ourselves up when change knocks us down, and how to move past our fear of change. We know that in times of change, we are bombarded with competing voices. Our media landscape is fractured, with countless sources claiming to offer truth. Political divisions create opposing narratives. And even within our own communities, conflicting opinions vie for our attention. In the Transfiguration story, the disciples hear many voices. Moses and Elijah speaking with Jesus, Peter suggesting they build shelters, and perhaps even their own internal voices of confusion and fear. But then comes the voice that matters most. This is my Son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him. God's instruction is clear and direct. Amid all the voices, listen to Jesus. Within our own United Church of Canada, significant change is unfolding. A study of demographic trends shows our congregations aging, with many churches facing closure. But in spite of that, there is hope. The United Church has launched Towards 2035, which aims to provide a data-informed, long-term strategy to equip congregations for the future. Recently, representatives from our 5 cluster churches here in southeast Ottawa gathered together for our bi-monthly meeting. And one of the topics was a discussion about how to facilitate our cluster and congregations to discuss how to adapt and grow in this time of transition. Someone in the group expressed it with beautiful simplicity. We need to listen carefully in all the voices sharing ideas for the voice of the Spirit. We need to listen carefully in all the voices sharing ideas for the voice of the Spirit. Listening for God's voice requires discernment, a spiritual practice of sifting through the noise to hear the divine wisdom. As faithful people, we serve one another by being present together, by continuing to attentively listen for God's presence and voice in our midst. And we know that true listening goes beyond mere hearing. It calls us to action as well. The Transfiguration story also encourages us to pick ourselves up when change knocks us down. When the disciples heard God's voice, they fell to the ground, overcome with fear. But Jesus approached them with compassion, touched them gently, and said, "Get up." Would you agree that change often knocks us down? A challenging health diagnosis alters how we live. The loss of a loved one can knock us off our feet. When my own father became terminally ill, my family knew the end was near. But when the end came, we discovered it was still a bit of a shock. We discovered it was just the beginning of our grief journey. There were arrangements to be made, emotions to process, and somehow we needed to continue caring for ourselves through it all. Losing a loved one is a busy time. We were unprepared for how much energy this would require. And sometimes it takes extraordinary strength just to pick ourselves up and continue on with our day. Sometimes it's a lack of change that knocks people down. As we observe Black History Month in February, we honor those who have repeatedly risen in the face of systemic oppression. Dr. Wanda Thomas Bernard, a Black member of the Canadian Senate and respected social worker and advocate, spoke powerfully about this resilience. She says, it's so hard when you are trying to live your life and there is racism at every turn. Yet she persists. When I think about the fight for change, I believe the biggest thing is having the courage to keep getting back up when someone tries to knock you down. In the Transfiguration story, Jesus doesn't merely command the disciples to get up, he helps them up. Together they walk down the mountain to face the changes ahead. Similarly, Christ walks alongside us, helping us rise when change, or lack of change, has knocked us down. We keep moving forward together, drawing strength from the divine presence and from our community. The third thing we hear in the Transfiguration story is heard often in Scripture, Old Testament and New. Do not be afraid. Fear is a natural response to change. We fear losing what we know and what has brought us comfort. We fear that new experiences will overwhelm us or prove disappointing. We fear we lack the energy to adapt and move forward. But this fear is deeply human. We understand it. It's okay to be human. The disciples felt it on that mountain. And we feel it today as we feel changes in our church, our society, and our world. However, Jesus' words, "Do not be afraid," do not magically dispel our anxiety. Rather, they are an invitation to move forward through our fear with the assurance that Christ walks beside us. They are words of encouragement, reminding us that we are stronger than all our fear. If you like word studies, you'll see that the word transfiguration itself illuminates the process of transformation that we're called to undergo. Break down transfiguration into its parts. It describes being taken across and through a challenge that changes us fundamentally. In the face of change, we are called not to fear retreat, not to fearfully retreat, but instead we're called to courageous engagement, to be transformed by change rather than paralyzed by it. So these three actions, listening for God's voice, rising when knocked down, and choosing courage over fear, form a path through change. We start by listening attentively for divine guidance amid competing voices. This discernment grounds us in truth and purpose. Then we change inevitably what knocks us down. We allow ourselves to be helped up by Christ, by community, by the strength we discover within ourselves. And finally, we move forward with courage, not because fear has disappeared, but because we trust the one who walks beside us. Remember, the disciples didn't remain on the mountain of transfiguration. After that transformative experience, they descended with Jesus to continue the ministry in a world desperately in need of hope and healing. The sacred story reminds us that we too are being transfigured, transformed by the challenges we face and the grace that sustains us. So we give thanks for Jesus' transfiguration that he shared with Peter, James, and John. We give thanks that they not only witnessed his glory on that mountain, but returned with new strength for the journey ahead. May God so bless us as we continue to allow ourselves and our faith community to be encouraged and transformed through change. Thanks be to God.